let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Affinity's webinar series. In this webinar, we will go one step further in understanding the decentralized tech in the practical aspect of how the tech can be implemented by a developer. While we introduce new terms in this particular webinar, we'll not dig too deep into the technical details. And finally, we have a wonderful demo to show how a developer can get started quickly. I'm going to spend more time on the actual implementation side of things. So let's dive into it. Quick introduction. My name is Chaitanya Samprajan. I'm a solutions architect at Affinity. I'm joined by my colleague Sanjay Kumar. He's a fellow solutions architect. Hi, Sanjay.
Hi.
Hey. So today's agenda is kind of seems jam-packed, but it's not really, it's really simple, and it fits well with the story that we are trying to discover together. We'll start with the big question as always, right? So we'll start with why. Why are we here? We'll spend a few minutes on why decentralized model is required for this internet age. Then we dive into the what. We discuss the building blocks of decentralized tech, such as DIDs, decentralized identities, and Verifiable Credentials, VCs in short. Then we dive into the open standards such as OpenID Connect for VC issuance, or OID for VCI in short. That is at the data ingress side of things. And we talk about OpenID for Verifiable Presentation, or OID for VP. We'll spend a few minutes on how these technologies were used at Affinity with our Affinity Trust Network framework. We spend some time on Affinity Vault, which is our implementation of personal data store. We'll talk about it in a moment. And then we spend a few minutes on how this solution could be used for authentication in the decentralized world. We'll discuss the advantages of doing a login using those standards. And for decentralized tech novice, all of these new technology standards might be overwhelming. So we'll talk about definitely developer tools, which will really help developers to get started quickly in a fun way, right? It's extremely easy to get started. We'll introduce Affinity's Trust Development Kit and something that is very new for this particular webinar, Affinity's IOTA framework. We're excited to talk about it. Then finally, we'll show a demo of how all of this works in a real world application. And before wrapping up this session, we'll discuss the big picture and the future we are building at Affinity. So let's get started with why, right? So centralized models we are used to. They are the easiest and most commonly used identity models. The reason for this model to be so prevalent lies in the context in which internet was first invented. Internet was designed as a common platform between different systems that cannot communicate between each other in the 70s. And this, HTML and web, it made it possible for different systems to talk in the common language, right? So that was the background around internet. So it has been system centric since the beginning. So in this model, the user information is owned and managed by the service provider. That's the biggest challenge. So it was there for a reason. It made life easy. It was simple and convenient. So that's how the internet has evolved. But this means that if the user creates an account and then deletes it later, for example, the data may still be kept by the service provider, which means that the user does not have control over his or her own data. That was a problem. So we have basically sacrificed control and privacy for the sake of simplicity and convenience. Coming to this era, we have decentralized solutions which will solve the problems of yesteryear, the web 1.2, 1.1, and 1.0 and 2.0. In the decentralized model, the data is controlled by the user, not by the service provider. User's data is stored in the personal data store, and the service provider can request data on a case-by-case basis, and that too for taking consent from the user at every step of the way when the data is shared. So we'll see in a moment how the personal data store works and what's the best way to implement this idea. So the decentralized, but let's first go into the decentralized model itself, right? So what are the building blocks of decentralized model for a novice? Um, so what really is a decentralized identity? A DID for short, right? A DID is an address representing who you are on the decentralized web. It can point to a person, organization, thing, data model, or an abstract entity. This is just like how someone would find a website by typing a URL on a browser, right? Like google.com opens Google's website. Another example could be finding a person using their social media handle, right? Like Twitter handle. So this is a DID is a handle in the decentralized world, in the decentralized space. So once you find a person through his or her DID, you can do things like issuing credential to that DID, or save them to contact list, or message them. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff in the decentralized world. So just like how if you type a URL in a browser, it resolves to a web page, right? Similarly, if you can use a service to resolve a DID to something called as DID document. So the document includes metadata to verify the interactions with the DID, right? So how you resolve a DID to DID document depends on the DID method. As you can see here, we are using DID key, the second part of the screen that we are the DID we are seeing here. So there are around 180 plus DID methods registered with the Decentralized Identity Foundation. So I'm showing you a DID key method. So now that we have established, so DIDs are pretty clear, right? So it's pretty easy to understand. But what can we do with the DID? We need a way to provide specific attributes of user identities and qualifications, let's say, without relying on a centralized authority. That was the main purpose, right? So at the heart of decentralized tech is a fundamental data model called verifiable credential. So we have been talking about personal data store. So you can think of it if you want to compare it with a centralized database. So a database will have a schema. A verifiable credential is a schema for a personal data store, or in this case, yeah, in the decentralized tech. A verifiable credential is a digital equivalent to any physical credential that you own in the physical world, right? And just like how a physical document that you carry with you can carry this VC with you, just like a physical document that might contain security features such as holograms, for example. VC also has securities in place. It's a simple JSON. We'll see how it looks like in a moment in a particular style. So let's understand this with a driver's license, right? So let's say when you visit a car rental company, you would be asked to present a license to them. So the license will be issued by the government, and it will be held by you in your wallet, and then it will be finally presented to the car rental company. That's the whole flow of a credential, right? So if we look at a credential in detailed manner, let's say in driver's license in this case, so we have three fundamental blocks called credential metadata, claim, and proof. So in a real physical world, so you would have something like a driver's license ID. So that is what we can think of as metadata. You would have some claims about the person that it is representing, let's say first name, last name, and so on. So that we can call it as claims. And finally, we have some sort of security measures like a hologram or whatever. So those we can think of it as proof. So converting the same thing into the equivalent of that in digital world. This is how a verifiable credential looks like for the people who have not seen it before. So credential data talks about the ID and the type and so on. The claims talk about the person's actual, like, what it is talking about, like first name, last name, date of birth, and so on. And finally, the proof section is where you can verify whether this data is actually coming from or actually issued by the said issuer. So everything is the data that is being shared will be always, encrypted using the issuer's private key, and the resultant hash will be stored in the proof section. That's how you can verify that this is not tampered with. So coming to our current, we have seen this picture in the earlier slides also, right? How the issuer issues the credentials and presents, and the holder presents it. So one of the questions we get asked quite a lot is, if I use F&D services, I'm logged into F&D tech, right? That's a common question people ask. The answer to that question is no. The reason for that is we follow open standards, which means that the user and service providers are not locked into affinity. So we have been talking about open standards such as DIDs and VCs, but they only handle the storage side of things. We still need the transport protocols. This is where OpenID comes into picture, right? So OpenID is pretty famous, like OIDC, for example, OpenID Connect, which is used by 90% of the authentication service providers. So OpenID Foundation is a corporation in cooperation with the DIF has come up with a set of protocols, one which allows the issuance side of things, and the other one which allows the presentation side of things. On the issuance side of things, we have OpenID for credential issuance, or OIDC for VCI in short. On the right-hand side, we have got OpenID for verifiable presentation, or OID for VP in short. So let's dive both of these protocols in detail. So OID for VCI, if we go a little bit into the detail, as mentioned before, this is an open standard which allows issuer to allow data to be stored in a completely different personal data store. So what it means is that the wallet does not need to know, or the wallet does not need to know the issuer beforehand. So just by getting the URL, you should be able to figure out who the issuer is, and they should not have prior communication or prior handshakes beforehand. So the URI could be wrapped under QR code for convenience, but basically it is a credential offer URI. And when an issuer issues a credential, they would give this credential offer URI. And from this, you should be able to figure out who the issuer is and what kind of VC they are trying to offer, right? So if you look at the offer URI, when you resolve that, you would get this details about the issuer. So the issuer, in this case, if you go to the a well-known endpoint, as you can see, issuer URL plus a well-known / OpenID - credential - issuer. These are the standards that were maintained by OpenID. So if you go to that particular URL, you would see certain the issuer metadata. The metadata could include authorization endpoints, credential endpoints, token endpoints, the kind of VCs they are issuing, and so on and so forth, right? So now that we have that information, let's look at how the actual flow works, right? How the issuance flow works. We already talked about steps 1, 2, and 3, like discovering the issuer and the metadata. If we look at step number 4, so this is where you would the wallet will request for a token from the issuer's token endpoint by passing in pre-authorized code or the transaction code. So that is part of the credential URI, offer URI, basically. The issuer token endpoint will send access token in response. This token can then be used to request for credential by calling in credential endpoint, like it will send a request to credential endpoint with the token and with the proof of possession of that holder DID's keys, right? If the issuer can verify that the request is coming from the right holder or the right user, the credential will be sent in response. So that's how the whole flow works, right? So now we looked at the OID for VCA, which is the issuance side of things. Let's spend some time discussing on the presentation side of things, right? As mentioned before, for presentation, OpenID come up with a standard OpenID for VP, OID for VP. But this is a new term, right? So what is verifiable presentation? So basically it is a wrapper on top of your verifiable credential, because verifiable credential at the end of the day is only a storage model. At the time of sharing, you would need to the holder, the user would still need to sign it and send it for verification. Like, the verifier should be able to verify that this data is actually coming from the holder, right? So verifiable presentation is the verifiable credential signed with the the holder's key, right? And it can also combine several VCs into one single abstraction. So that, because in many use cases, you might be requesting for like more than one VC in that particular use case, right? We'll talk about it in a more detail. We'll see an example also. So, but at the core of it is something called as presentation exchange. That's the protocol that OID for VP depends on. So think of presentation exchange as a query language. So we'll see how it looks like in a moment. So, but to talk in very plain language, like, if you are talking to a database, you would use SQL queries, right? But to talk to a personal data store, you would need another query language. You can think of PEX as a query language. Basically, that's how it is. So as I said, VP is basically a list of VCs combined together. VP is a list of VCs combined together and signed with holder's private key to get the verifiable data for that particular use case. So let's look at presentation exchange, the PEX protocol that we are talking about. So here is an example of how a PEX request could look like. So in this particular use case, we are requesting for a VC of type user profile. As you can see here, the pattern in this one is user profile V2. So in response to that request, the PDS, the personal data store, could come up with a response which looks like this. The response will have something called as VP token, and the VP token will in turn contain the verifiable presentation, and the verifiable presentation in turn will have verifiable credentials. And the VCs will obviously have claims that you are looking for. So that's how the whole presentation exchange protocol works, right? So so let's go at we have talked about the open standards and everything. At Affinity, we are building Affinity Trust Network, which is powered by the suite of tools and product services that bring our vision of holistic identity. So at the core of ATN, or Affinity Trust Network, is Vault, the Affinity Vault. That's on the right side of your image. Vault essentially is a personal data store. We have been talking about personal data stores. So it empowers collect, store, and sharing of data in a consent-driven manner. And we have been talking about cutting edge technologies like, DIDs, VC, so OID for VC, VP, cryptographic signing, verification, all these things. Affinity Elements is a fully managed standards compliant internet scale API backplane. That's a big word that abstracts all these technologies for the developer. So it's the abstraction of all these technologies that we have been talking about. So and the connectors on the left on the right side of your screen is a framework to collect the data from several sources. So VCs are one source of data, but there could be different ways of storing the data, right? So the data could be coming from plain files or APIs or KYC service providers. So several of those things, right? So all of them we combine them into something called as connector framework, Affinity connectors. And on the top, you see Affinity Login, which is a passwordless, decentralized, standard-based secure authentication. So that brings registration and sign-in into just one single click. We'll see how it works in a moment. And finally, we'll talk about messaging and concierge at the end of this session. We'll leave that to the big picture. So let's dive a little bit into the details of Vault. So Vault is a consumer-facing personal data store, as I've mentioned before. It's available in iOS and Android. A web version of it is also available. So it is based on all the open standards. So it is portable. It makes everything that we have been talking about. So it enables all these things to be like it enables collect, store, and share. And it stores the data in standardized schema in the Vault. And finally, third parties can request data with the user's consent. If we go, so we have also talked about Affinity Login. So we can do a lot of cool things with the standards that we have been talking about, right? So that login is one of those cool things. So the webinar is not focused on the authentication, so I'll not go too much into the details. But basically, it allows for users to be logged in with just one click. Like one of the biggest problems with most authentication solutions out there is that you would need to ask users to fill out big forms, right? So with the Affinity, with the login, decentralized login and the Affinity login we have built, it is you would need to just ask for a specific identity to be shared. And if the user shares that identity, the user will be logged in. So you can verify it independently, right? So it makes sure that the users do not need to enter a bunch of information before they can actually trust you and log in with your into your app. So we'll see that in action in a moment. Okay, so we talked a lot about decentralized technology. Let's take a moment to catch our breath, right? A lot of information, but the good news is you don't need to know all the nitty-gritties of how decentralized tech works. At Affinity, we built our products with a developer in mind, always developer first, right? And so we built this set of tools, and we abstracted away all the complexity away for you. And that makes life really easy for app developers to get started. We call this Affinity Trust Development Kit, or TDK in short, right? So if we look at a TDK, so this is the GitHub link. So it's an open source repo basically. Sanjay will show you in a moment how that looks like. But at high level, these are the building blocks of TDK, right? So please go ahead and scan the QR code if you would like to look at it. So basically, it has auth provider, which gives you which enables you to get tokens to get access to all the TDK services. So TDK includes issuance service for issuance of VCs, verification, and we have something called as IOTA framework. This is the first time we are talking about this in the webinar, in webinars series actually, very exciting. But the IOTA framework and verification service, which they will enable the data sharing side of things, data sharing and verification side of things. So we'll look at that in a moment, how it looks like in a moment. But TDK library is right now is available in TypeScript and Python. Soon we'll release the Dart version as well. So IOTA framework, as I said, was announced just a week ago in one of the events in Berlin by our CTO. This is the first time we're introducing the framework in the webinar series. Very excited. So why did we create this IOTA framework? What's the purpose, right? So let's imagine that you are a developer trying to access data from personal data store. So you would need to write your PEX query to do that. It would be lengthy, hard to maintain, and even harder to test, right? So IOTA framework is Affinity's end-to-end implementation of OID for VP protocol. It starts with configuration of data sharing flow, setting up the queries. We'll see that in a moment with easy to use templates. There are already templates that you can use. It provides developer tooling to securely set up process, communication channels, consent logging, validation. So that was on top of OID for VP. So these are additional features on top of OID for VP. So this managed flow enables anyone to get started quickly. And then developers can use the same flow to get data on front end or back end securely, while Affinity, the IOTA framework, does all the heavy lifting behind the scenes, right? So at a very high level, it involves basically 4 steps. You initialize in the app that the developer is building, they would import the IOTA library and initialize with the IOTA config ID obtained from the developer portal, right? So we'll see how the developer portal looks like. Sanjay will show us. The resultant session could be used to create a data request from Vault. The request will take query ID from the developer again. That would also be configured in the portal. Every request to IOTA session will result in a secure webhook callback. And that callback user will then ask to provide consent to share the data. So if the consent is provided, then the data will be sent back on that webhook callback URL in a secure manner. So at the core of it, that's how it works. So looking at a little bit of the code, so just a few snippets of the code, Sanjay will actually run us through it. Basically how the import works, how the initialization works, and how the request could be done with Affinity IOTA framework. So with that, let's dive into the demo. Yeah, over to you, Sanjay.
Thanks, Jay, and thank you for giving the detail about that, how the decentralized tech is helping to control data and how the open standards are helping us to achieve that. So we as a developer obviously need to go through all the standards, the tech draft and everything, understand that and implement that. And that's where the affinity comes, which has already worked on the standard and have created some tools and services and the development kit like TDK, which can help the developers. So I'll share my screen and we'll go through the demo and then how we can achieve this one by one, right? So I can share my this Chrome browser. So before proceeding, to understand that how we can use the IOTA framework from the vault, we need to have the vault, and in our vault, we need to have the data issued by someone. Either we can create our personal profile ourselves, or we can have data issued by someone else, right? So, and also we'll see that how our login works. So in this case, we have two different personality which are working. In first phase, we'll see that how a consumer can utilize the Affinity Vault and collect and store the verifiable credentials in the vault or in his personal data store, and how, if required, it can be shared easily with any other application uh, based on the consent-driven data sharing. So this is for the consumer that will see how it's leveraging the open standard and the Affinity Vault. Then we'll deep dive from the developer perspective and see that whatever we had built, like issuance service or IOTA framework, how we can configure so that we can leverage the open standard without uh, uh, deep diving, or maybe without spending too much time in understanding, or maybe doing the stuff from scratch, because it has been already done, already understood by the affinity, and we have built a simple interface for anyone who can implement this in any other framework. So for start, I'll proceed with the consumer flow, where I, as a just normal user like you, have come to this website, Empower Academy, where I see that there are some courses listed, and maybe I want to do some course here. So for that, I need to create account, and we'll see that how Affinity login will help us in easily log into this website without using any password. So we can achieve the passwordless login here, and this login and the issuance has been covered in the previous iteration of the webinar. So if you want to know in more detail, you can visit our Affinity blog website and go through the previous webinar to understand more. For now, I'll try to show you that how the login works. And before that, I have opened my vault here. Let me just unlock this and see that how does it looks like. So I have my consumer vault already registered with Affinity. And here I have my profile where I have my personal information, I have my contact information, and then I have a profile picture. And here is my DID. So this is the decentralized identifier in the decentralized world, where I can claim or someone can reach out to me and verify that, okay, I control this DID. Similarly, I can see my settings. I can see that, okay, what are the credentials I have. So I can we can see that I have one phone number which is verified credential with me, and then I have this course certificate. Similarly, we'll be getting one more certificate which I will be using to apply for a job. So let's go here. I'll just go ahead and log in. As I said, if you want to know more in deep dive for the login itself, you can go ahead with our previous webinar or any other event recordings. Right. So here I have shared my data with this application from my vault, my name, DID, and email address. So this application has logged me in. Now I see that I already have completed this two certificate and few are in progress. And this website is asking me to claim the certificate so that I can get the certificate. So I see many of you are requesting a certificate uh, for this particular webinar. This can be also issued as a VC. The only catch is that someone should be able to use that verifiable credential certificate so that that's worth of getting the certificate, right? But for now, we'll focus on this particular thing. But you can let us know in the chat that where you are using those certificates so that we can see if we can issue that as a verifiable credential. Here, we will be using the issuance service, the CIS and OID for VCI. So this application is presenting us the detail of the certificate in raw form, and it's asking whether you want to generate the verifiable credentials. If I click here, get certificate, this will use the ATN APIs by using the TDK, and it will issue me a certificate. So this is my name already because I have signed in, and this is the DID where this VC has been issued to. Then I have option whether I can save it in my vault or I can save it to any other compatible vault or wallet, which because we are working with the open standard, and if anyone else has implemented the vault or this open standard to either issue a VC, store a VC, or save the VC, they can or you can also store this particular certificate or verifiable credential in that vault or wallet. For now, I will go ahead and save it to my Affinity Vault. So I have to just click here, Affinity Vault. And as Chaitanya had demonstrated that we will be getting one offer URL. So this button is actually using the offer URL to send to my vault that, okay, this is the offer I have got. And this is the detail it will be displayed after the verification of the DID, because this particular DID has been issued this VC, no one else can claim this particular certificate. So once after the authentication, this detail will be shared with user, in this case me, that whether you want to accept this certificate or not. Either I can reject or I can accept. So I'll go ahead and accept this certificate. And now previously we saw that I have two certificate or the credentials, phone number and power certificate. Now also I have one this third certificate where I can see that this is these are the detail where I have completed this particular course on this particular days, what is the course duration and everything. So this comes from the issuance side, and for issuance, if you want to do the issuance, you need to configure your application with TDK, use the TDK, register with Affinity as a developer, and do the configuration, use schema, and start issuing the certificate. Again, we will go if that in detail for the IOTA framework, but it's almost similar. But CIS has been covered already in the webinar. So if you want more detail, maybe you can visit our blog site, or also we have this doc site. So let me show you, and maybe someone can ping that in chat. So here we have docs.affinity.com, where you can go ahead and see the other informations and all other open standard information, and also the Affinity features and services what has been listed. And here you can find out that what are these TDK, what is the CLI, what is portal, and what is IOTA framework, and the credential issuance. So in this example, you can go ahead and read out all these things, that how the issuance work and what you need to do. So now let's come back to our user flow of um, this issuance and the code certificate. So I see that I as a user have received this certificate. Now, what I can do with this certificate, because this is based on the open standard, any other application can also implement or accept the open standard based credentials, and they can utilize that for easy integration with the user vault, and accept the credentials, receive the data, and go ahead with their own transaction or do their own logic. To proceed with, this completes the login and the issuance part. Now we'll see that how IOTA framework, which was launched just last week in Berlin, will help us to seamlessly integrate the application which can request data from users vault, right? So I have another application running here. This is called the job portal, right? The Unchained, where I see that a bunch of jobs are listed here. Maybe I'm interested in applying one of the job, and for that, obviously, for any job portal, you need to create account. And again, we'll see that how easy it is to just create the account here on this website without using any password, without filling any form. So again, I'm using my vault to log in, and I see that I need to unlock the vault so that I can share my data. And because I have already auto approved, I see that my email, mobile number, and my names are shared. So I have been greeted here as Sanjay, right? And let's say I want to apply for this senior software engineer job. I click on apply now, and then I have been presented this form to fill. I guess it's very normal for any job application, or no matter where you apply, that you need to provide some detail. And normally, in most of the cases, you need to enter the detail manually. upload the picture or upload any certificate detail or anything else which has been asked in on the job portal. But because this job portal has implemented the IOTA framework, this is giving me one option to fetch data from Vault. This is possible only because IOTA framework enables application to integrate with ATN, the Affinity Trust Network, so that they can reach out to the user's vault and request the particular data which they need. So let's see what this application is requesting and how it uses my data. So I can go ahead and click on this fetch from vault, and then we'll see that how IOTA is working in background. You can see some pop-up where it will give some information. So it's creating one IOTA session, and then it's creating one request session. This request session will be routed through the ATN, and it will reach to the my vault. So if I see I have unlocked the vault, so now I can see that this particular job portal application is requesting this kind of data from my vault. Because I have the data in my vault, I can either decline or continue. Now, because I have to apply for job, I'll click continue so that this data will be shared to this job portal. Let's see. So now I see that as soon as I click the allow, the IOTA framework has shared the user's vault data based on the consent given by the user to this job portal application. Now I see that my data and the picture, the profile picture has been already applied. So I do not need to do any manual stuff here to fill the form. Now let's see, I have gained or earned the certificate from my previous course certificate website. That also I can utilize here to apply for the job. Generally, in the normal case, maybe you can apply or you can send the certificate in the PDF form, but PDF can be edited, and there have been many incidents where the people just change the name and send it across to the employer, which after verification, they see that it's not authentic certificate. That's the beauty of this verifiable credential, where the proof of the authenticity is embedded in the credential itself. And that's where as soon as I share or you share these credentials with anyone, they can independently verify the authenticity of the certificate. So there won't be any delay. And as soon as the credentials are shared, they can verify whether this certificate or any data shared is valid or not valid. So let's see, I will just share my certificate from my vault because I have these details here. So I'll go ahead and click on this share certificate from Vault button. And again, it will, this application is using IOTA framework, so it will create the session and it's requesting one particular data type. Again, I had to unlock because without unlocking, the Vault data is not visible even to the user or to any other application or even for the IOTA framework. So as soon as I unlock, the query is run on the vault and I see that Empower course certificate has been found in my vault. And I can see the same detail that this is my IT automation with Python course, which has been completed on this duration and everything. If I agree, I can continue uh, by clicking this button. And as soon as I click, this certificate detail in the JSON format. So obviously this is not the PDF format or anything, but this has been in the JSON format, which contains is metadata information, is proof, and obviously is claim about the user that what has been done. So claims in this case would be the course name, the completion date, the status of the completion, and then the user's name or the learner name. If I click here, I can see that, okay, this is the Python certificate issued to Sanjay Kumar, and this is my email ID, when it was completed and everything. And it has been verified automatically by the verification service. So now once I have this data already filled, I don't have to type anything in this case. That's the uh, journey what we are trying to establish, where applications can enable for their users so that they can reduce the friction of doing any kind of transaction or business from end consumer. So once I click on apply for this job, because I have my data already filled, this is done. So I have applied for the job already without going through any manual intervention. So this was the user flow. Let's see how you as a developer can enable the same thing, the whatever we have seen everything here for your application. We have seen the login and issuance. So obviously you can go ahead because it has been discussed already. You will get much more detailed documentation and the recording of the previous events. Now, IOTA framework we are discussing first time. I'll go in detail then how you can do that. For that, first of all, you need the vault so that you can register for developer profile. So we have one Affinity portal here. Let me sign in again. So here I have my vault where I'm signing in as a developer. So this is my developer profile. Okay, I don't have the profile picture here, if you see. And this is the portal. So portal.offering.com. I will sign in here. Okay. So I have been logged into this Affinity portal and I'm working with my default project. So this is dashboard for the developer. So the end user or any consumer will not be utilizing this. This is just to configure your application so that you can utilize the Affinity Trust Network to enable your consumer to utilize the beauty of the decentralized technologies. Now, if I see here, I have the credential issuance which I use to issue the certificate. I have this Affinity login, which I have implemented so that the consumer can log in to my application. And now I have this IOTA framework. So this is the framework which enables seamless integration or seamless request uh, of data from the vault. And here I have two configuration, one job portal, one for the loyalty for other demo application. If I go inside this job portal, I see that there's a configuration ID and I have configured few of the PEX queries. So these are the queries which Chaitanya talked about that this will be used in the OID for VP. So based on this specs, the data will be returned from the vault. Also, you can modify this based on your application's need, that what kind of data you need from the user. So in this case example, I'm requesting email, maybe gender, date of birth, the address, and everything. So I have configured multiple query, but I might be using just one or two from this whole bunch of query. That will see that how we can configure. Then we talked about the TDK. So in TDK, if I click here, let's see. In TDK, we have client, library, and packages. So everyone has this own utility. Let's say for the packages, auth provider is there. So it helps your application or developer application to authenticate with the Affinity Trust Network so that they can utilize the Affinity API and services. Then we have libraries like IOTA Browser, IOTA Core, which we will see in just a few minutes. And then we have clients here, like to manage your wallet, to manage your issuance, to manage your access for other project or APIs, and a few other things here, right? So, but mostly we'll focus on the IOTA browser and IOTA Core part of the IOTA framework. And also, if you want to read in more detail, you can go ahead on this particular menu, and then you can read out everything which will give you more detail about how you can utilize this. But now I'll show the same thing going step by step here. So let's see. Obviously, you need the developer account, so you should have this Affinity portal. Now you need to go here and create one configuration. So let's say I'll give one demo name, right? And then I need to select one wallet where I will be signing or requesting data from. Right? I can click on enable consent log so that every user who has given me the consent, I can see that, okay, whether this data has been shared with consent or not. Once I do that, I have been created this, or I have been given this demo configuration where configuration I did it, and then I can go ahead and create you query. So let's say I can say email, and I can directly select from already defined template. Either I can change something here or I can use the same as it is. Obviously, for the complex structure, you need to select or maybe modify the PEX query. For PEX also, we have our documentation where you can go ahead and see in more detail that, okay, how the PEX can help. So let me see if I can, right? So more about PEX query. If you go here, so you can go through this documentation to understand that, okay, how PEX can help you to carry what kind of data and how easily you can modify. I'll come back to here and I'll just click create. Now I have this configuration ID and I have this query ID, right? These two things are needed to start the IOTA session. But before that, we also need to authenticate our application so that it can communicate with Affinity Trust Network and utilize the IOTA framework. So for that, we need the CLI to generate the token for the application. So we have this link where you can go ahead and read about the CLI, and very easily you can install this on your system. I have already installed on my system, and let me see if it's working. So I'll go ahead and click Affinity. Okay, and then I need to create token. Okay, so let's say I say token, and let's say create. I hope you can see my screen. Create token. Okay, and then I can give any token. Let's say I'll say demo or webinar demo or webinar, right? And it's asking whether I need a key pair for the token. If I have already, I can say no, but in this case I'll go ahead with yes. Okay, then give any passphrase to make it more secure. So I'll say webinar token generation, right? And then it's asking whether I need to give this token some permission to the other project so that they can execute on this behalf. So I'll say yes. And this is asking what kind of permission I need to give. So I can give any very granular level of permission, but for this example, I can go ahead and say star. And in this case also, I'll say star. And then I can see message that, okay, is generating some credential. Okay. So I have not logged in. So let me log in again, because everything we need to authenticate ourselves as, okay, I have typed wrong. Affinity start. Okay, it will start one session where I need to again utilize my vault to log in here. Okay, authenticating. Okay, okay, done. Once it's done, so my CLI has been authenticated. I can close that button, sorry, browser, and then I can go ahead and again create the token. So I'll give webinar token. Okay, create new, yes. Okay, passphrase, I'll just type webinar token. Okay, I'll give yes, then star for permission, star again for permission, and then it will generate the token. Okay. So it has given me a few things. Let me just zoom out. Okay, I hope you can see. So it has given me the ID, ARI, the owner ARI. This is my information. Then the name. Then it's giving this scope of when this can be used. And okay, and then I see that signing algorithm and other information is also there. Then I see I have the token ID, I have project ID where this token has been generated, and then I have private key. Now let's go back to my application, which I'm using here. So this is my ENV where I need to feed into this detail. So let's say these details are needed for the login. We will not focus on that, but this is needed to authenticate this application on ATN. And now we have got the key ID, token ID, the private key, everything. I can just fill it here so that my application is ready to communicate to ATN, so that it can use IOTA framework or issuance service to start issuing the certificate or the credentials or start requesting the data from the vault. So in this case, we are focusing on mostly requesting data, right? So we'll see, we have got our this token ID and key ID. Also, we have created, in this case, our this way the demo configuration ID and then our query ID. So let's see how it utilizes the TDK. So I'll just go ahead here and we'll show you the some part of the code, and also I'll show you that how you can generate one sample reference app so that you can try at your system. Right, so I'll click here and I'll go to hooks, okay, and use iota key. So this is my code written here in this application, where I'll see that okay how it's utilizing everything from the TDK. So we saw that as soon as I click in this example, let me go back again here, apply now. And as soon as I click on this link or button, this function is getting called and it will check whether I have the IOTA session or not. If I do not have the IOTA session, it will try to create an IOTA session for me. And for that IOTA session, we require this token generated from the CLI. Okay. So once that IOTA session is created, and we'll also see that okay how this is being created. So I'll click here. So if you see this create IOTA session is going here and saying await and get credential. So to create the session, we need credential, and credential is given by the IOTA code. So if I click here, I see that this is being my backend API is being called. So I'll go to the IOTA start. So let me go to my API. This is my hook, pages, API, and IOTA. Click here, and I'll see that okay, I'm using this IOTA code. So IOTA code is utilized to create the IOTA credentials. If I see here IOTA credentials, yeah, so this is there, and this is getting, or this is using the auth option and auth provider from the TDK, and auth provider will be provided all the token information which we have got it here. So if I just show you that detail, let me go back here. Right, get affinity provider, and in affinity provider, sorry, it get affinity auth provider. We are getting this project ID, token ID, private key, public key, and everything. What we have got it from here, because I have already given this data into my environment variable. This detail will be shared automatically here. Okay, so let me go here, and this got the auth provider, and then this auth provider will be used to get the token information, and this token information will be given to the IOTA, which will give you the credentials. Once I have the credential, I can create the IOTA session. So let me go back again to this IOTA query. Okay, and here I am checking whether I have the IOTA session or not. If I do not have, it will give me or create the IOTA session. And once I have the IOTA session, I can use that to prepare requests. So now here the query ID will matter. So using this query ID, it will prepare the request that what kind of data is required. So here I have created this particular query ID, but this is just requesting email. But in our example, what we saw, I'll go back to that. So this is my job portal, and I requested two query or two kind of data. One was that all-in-one, where I was requesting email, I was requesting phone number, I was requesting name, I was requesting family name, the date of birth, the address, like locality, gender, everything, right? In this case, you can create a similar kind of pics so that the same query ID can be given at this particular level. And as soon as I click on this, it will generate that particular session here, the session request, and query the data from the vault. Similarly, I have another query here. If I go to the certificate full name, where I'm just requesting the this particular certificate. Okay, so as soon as I use this query ID, this outer session will utilize that query ID to query the data from the vault. So this is how we can utilize, and this is being this IOTA session is coming from this IOTA browser. So what we saw for the backend, it was IOTA core, and what we see here is the IOTA browser. Everything is available as open source. If we go to here, this is our open source repo at the Affinity. Here you can see that this TDK is available for the TypeScript and Python, and this all detail you can obviously learn from our documentation site if you go to this TDK documentation. So you can learn everything from here. So we can see that how easily we can configure this IOTA to utilize the ATN and query the data from the Affinity Vault. If you want to try similar stuff, you can again go back to the CLI. I'll just quickly show that. And you type this command Affinity, and then there's a command generate an app. If you hit enter, you can select the Affinity, select the Next.js, Django, .NET, or any other thing which you would like to try. But I'll go ahead with the Next.js, and then I'll use the Next.js, next auth.js for the authentication. And then I can enter the path where I need to create this or download this reference application. I click here demo, right? And for now, I'll say no to no configure automatically login. But if you know your config ID, you can go ahead and create, right? So I can go ahead here and we'll say, okay, let me go here. You'll see, okay, webinar, a new demo, right? So this data has been uh, so this application has been downloaded on my local system, and if I go to the code, right? So this has been opened, and I can see that there is a README file here which I can follow to run this application. And also I have an ENV example which I can copy as ENV and fill all the detail from the Affinity portal and then from the CLI and start running my application. So this will complete the demo, and we have few more details like how this works actually. So this is what I explained, that we have developer where he need to log into the portal and create the configuration, and he need the token from the CLI. And IOTA framework will utilize this token generated from the CLI and then the credential, and that credential will be utilized in along with the query ID to request some data uh, from the user's vault. So this completes our IOTA introduction and the whole demo, and from the developer perspective, that how you can utilize this in your application. If you have any question, obviously you can ask in this particular chat, or maybe you can reach out to us in contact us form. For now, I'll encourage you to go ahead and read the documentation on the docs portal. And also you can go ahead and register yourself as a Affinity developer here, right? So I'll give it back to the Chai. I guess I've taken much time to explain, but yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen and we'll move back to Chai for more detail.
Thanks, Sanjay. That was great. Thanks for the detailed session. So before we end this session, just a quick, you know, walkthrough of what the big picture and what we are trying to achieve here. Just a quick reminder. So we have seen the demo. So the big picture is like, we have talked about this. On the right-hand side, you have the developer side of things. You would have the TDK, Dev Portal, Biz Portal, and all that stuff. So Concierge is kind of very exciting, a personal AI assistant that it would help you to get most value out of your data. So traditional bots will give you very generic suggestions without understanding your personal context. The Concierge that we are building runs AI models on top of your data with a fully consented way, right? So that's very exciting. That's something
Are you sharing the screen?
I'm sharing the screen, sorry. Okay, I thought I was sharing the screen. Sorry about that. So now hopefully you can see my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So we were talking about
yeah, can see it now. Thanks.
sorry about that. So we were talking about the Concierge, which is on the left side of your screen. So Concierge is a AI tool that we have built for our, that can take your data that you can run, get the most value out of your data. Our Concierge can give you more, suggestions that can specifically for your data, because it runs on your own personal data store, right? And on the top, you have person ATM, which is Affinity's trust messaging. So it is a fast, scalable peer-to-peer messaging service. It's a communication protocol between the dates. Traditionally, you might be using any messaging tool like Amazon SQS or something. But here you don't need to know. It's a platform agnostic messaging tool basically. And finally, you have the Affinity Trust Registry on the bottom, which is a framework that help establish, like it's a network of networks basically. Like it has a whitelisting thing of all the entities that are trusted. So it's kind of enables networking effect between different, let's say, service providers of similar type, like insurance services providers, for example. And finally, with that, we come to the closing of that session. But just a key takeaway. We talked about the importance of a decentralized model. We talked about open protocols such as DATES VC, SOID for VCI, and OID for VP. We have seen Affinity Trust Network, which will empower users to collect, store, and share data with consent. And finally, like we have seen TDK, Affinity TDK, which is a very handy tool for developers to get started. So, so I would encourage you to we would invite you to get started with Affinity. It's extremely easy and fun. Please stay in touch with us through the webinars and in-person meetups. For one-on-one conversations, schedule a meeting with us or technical inquiry calls. Please go to our contact us page and send us a small request. One of our solutions architect will be thrilled to discuss your use case. For exciting use cases, we can build the POC together with you. Very excited to talk to you on how you would use our tech. So we are a startup. So we want everyone to securely control, manage, and get benefits from their data. That's our vision, right? So just a quick recap. So as a startup, we are always looking for feedback. Very eager to see what you think about us. Please complete the session survey if you want to learn more, deep dive into your use case, or just do whiteboarding with you. Please ping us, and thanks for your valuable feedback.